Okay, welcome everyone to the Man Art Gallery. My name is Lana Wilson. I'm the acting director, curator of the Man Art Gallery. And behind me, appropriately social distancing, is Danielle Castle, and she is the acting educator at the Man Art Gallery. And we have just been contacted by some artists in the different, some teachers in the different school divisions today. And Danielle is going to be leading some virtual tours later on this week. And so that's pretty excited. We're excited for the different classes. But thank you for joining me for virtual art appreciation today, which is every Tuesday at 3. And you can hear more from Danielle on Wednesdays when she posts activities from Danielle's Hive of Creativity. And so we're really looking forward to the family art project that she'll be posting tomorrow. Thank you. So today we're going to start talking about sculptures, and we're going to be embarking on a series over the next several weeks where we talk about the different elements of art and principles of design. In the first couple of weeks of these series, while the gallery has been closed due to the COVID-19 closures, we did spend a lot of time looking at paintings. And so I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to pay special attention to the many talented artists working in sculpture who have their work in the 44th Annual Winter Festival Art Show and Sell, which is still up at the gallery because artists were not able to take their work home with them. That means that we get to enjoy it in this online format. So when we think about sculpture, we're thinking about an art form that is inherently three-dimensional in nature, right? It has length, width, and height, right? It has a depth element to it as well. It has form. It has mass, it takes up space, and then space exists around it. The space around an object is what we would call negative space. And so we would pay special attention to these spatial considerations when we're looking at sculpture, in addition to the other elements of art, like color, texture, value, the other elements of art. One of the things that's really unique about sculpture too is how the different materials that sculptures are made out of can be used as elements in the artwork themselves. A lot of the artists will really incorporate those unique inherent aspects of the materials that they're using into their artistic practice and into their form. So today, as we look at a selection of artworks of sculptures from the Winter Festival, we're going to be doing a survey of the different types of materials that the sculptors have used, and we'll be paying attention to some of the aspects of the materials and how the artists are using them in those works to emphasize. So to start with, we're going to look at this artwork that's behind me. This is one of my favorites. We're going to start out with a couple of examples of sculptures in wood. Here we go. So the first sculpture that we're looking at, this is called Walleye circa 2525, and this is by artist Jim Mason, and Jim is from Melfort, and it is basswood, maple, copper, and barbed wire. And so Jim is also using aspects of found objects or existing materials here. And so one of the things that we notice about wood is, of course, when we're thinking about wood sculpture, we're thinking about how this is created by carving, by removing material. Of the three different ways that we have to create sculptures, we think about carving, where we remove material, and we are often seeing that, for the most part, in materials such as stone or wood. We're looking at the idea of modeling, where we're building up the form, and often we have that in clay and plasticine and wax, right? We create the shapes by building up the forms in modeling. We also have assemblage, which is more of a 20th and 21st century sculptural form where we're bringing objects together, assembling them in new ways to form new relationships with artistic intent. So when we look at this particular sculpture here, we're thinking about how Jim is using the different aspects of the material wood as he creates his sculpture. And so he is carving into it, He's creating some great shapes and spaces here. He's painting it. He is wood burning, right? He's using his wood burning tool, and I'll get really close so you can see some of the fantastic aspects of his wood burning here. He's using found objects like gears, a bit of a steampunk aesthetic going on here. He's using the barbed wire. He's modifying the copper here by creating holes in it. And he's in the fish. It might be initially difficult to tell that it's wood because he has used so much color and texture, but we really see elements of wood coming out in the base. And so I think that Jim is quite brilliant at incorporating the base really into the whole sculpture. And with the wood base here, he's carved into it to help unify it with the carvings of the walleye on top. But he's really emphasizing elements of the wood grain and the texture of the bark here and the natural shapes of the wood. And he's contrasting that with the elements of the metal and the copper. And so I think we have this really unique interplay of the metals and the wood in this particular wood sculpture. So definitely the idea of carving, of removing materials and using wood burning to be able to create this pattern and texture, right? Carving into the sculpture. Moving forward through the gallery, we see this is fantastic. This is James Cathcart's sculpture called Big Bad John. This is an example of a sculpture in metal. And we also have in the front gallery another metal piece. This particular piece by James is it's a metal sculpture and it's an assemblage. This is a type of collage. So we'll have a look at, here we go, James Cathcart, Big Bad John, metalwork. And it is a 1940s binder flywheel. And this was the winner of the Mayor's Prize and Best in Show, thanks to the City of Prince Albert and On the Avenue Artisans Gallery. Thank you so much for sponsoring this prize. And this is a really important piece for John. He talks about loving this vintage 1940s binding machine that's on his family's property and playing with it as a child and creating all kinds of fantasy worlds and having heroic adventures and imagining that this piece of machinery could be used in many different ways. And in this particular piece, he's welding together the different elements that he has harvested from the binder. And he created 3 artworks on the theme of harvest. And here, of course, right, he has the John Deere logo on it, but potentially also referencing the harvesting of deer and hunting as an aspect of farm life, although this is a pretty wicked gun that looks like it's going to be doing quite a bit of damage. But he also talked about, imagining being in different scenarios, maybe war scenarios or things like that, and playing that kind of fantasy play as a child. But with this particular work, he's able to assemble the different metal parts, think about what shapes they remind him of, and then use his skills of welding and shaping and grinding down aspects of the metal to create new forms, and then painting the different pieces. And so Tim Moore, our guest curator, was really taken with how James was able to get this fantastic paint coating on top and a lot of the detail and attention that James was able to bring with this particular metal sculpture. So we have examples of sculpture in wood and metal at the gallery. As we continue further in the front gallery space, here we have another example of a metal sculpture, and this particular piece is by Jared Mayer, and this has been wonderful because of the really whimsical story that I imagine is going on with this particular art piece. It's difficult with the backlighting here, but this is called Apollo, and you can see that this is also a metal assemblage that has been welded and wired together. And it does in fact light up with the headlight and this robot form with the plastic plant. And so you can see the joining together. So disparate bits of metal being assembled together to create relationships with the different parts and shapes and to create new narratives as those forms suggest different characters and a sense of a narrative going on. So we see, right, a lot of assemblage works with a material such as metal. As we look at other materials for sculpture in the front gallery, again here we have more works in wood. And Rod Peterson here with Apple Supreme. This is an apple wood vase with a wood finish. Rod is really brilliant at highlighting the natural characteristics of wood as a sculptural material. With this particular piece, he's really added a fantastic, unique element by leaving this natural wood edge finish. And so that natural edge continues all the way around the outside of the bowl. So you really get a sense of the bark of the outside of the tree. And Rod is also, you can tell that he absolutely loves the color and aspects of the wood grain. It's a little bit out of focus there, I'm sorry. But as we look inside the bowl there, we see how the particular shape of this particular vessel is emphasizing that wood grain. And so we see the colors of the wood. He's not using color to obscure the natural color of wood. He's instead using oils and waxes to highlight the natural color of the wood and draw attention to the wood grain patterns. So really integral to this piece is the natural wood material that he's using. Similar but different is the piece that we have over here. And this is the winner of the Frank Sudall Memorial Award. And this was sponsored by the Prince Albert Woodturners Guild. Thank you very much to the Guild. And this is by Leah Jolson. That's called Coliseum Mixed Media. So wood and brass. And this is a kaleidoscope. And so with this piece, like Rod's piece, right, we're creating the forms here by removing material. Rod is turning the bowl on the lathe, and so he's creating this form, a type of carving, right? Anytime that you're removing material, you're carving. He's removing the material and then smoothing it on the lathe. Leah also has some turning elements and is removing the material to create this functional kaleidoscope. She's also using brass elements here, and I'll show you what it looks like if I can. If we look through. I'm afraid I don't think I can get that anymore in focus. But as you turn it, you can actually see some beautiful photos. I'll post a photo taken through the lens later, but I'll show you the details of the liquid chamber here. And so you see in an oil solution in this chamber, she's put glass beads and different shards of plastic and glass. So she creates this lovely functional kaleidoscope. And we have more for sale in the gift shop as well. But with her piece here, she's also emphasizing the wood grain, and she's drawing your attention to that, and she's using a finish that's highlighting the wood grain. So we have sculptural materials, sculptures made from metal. We have sculptures that are made from wood. So this is a particularly clever way of incorporating a sculptural material and really using it to help create meaning in the artwork itself. And so this is a fantastic piece here. This is by Kylie Ely Blackburn. This is called Roll Reversal, and it is in fact made of photo negatives, sinew, and found objects. And so what Kylie has done, as you see, is she's used negatives to create this camera shape, right? So again, we can think of this as an assemblage because she is using found objects like these negatives, and then she has bound the edges through the holes in the film that would wind around the sprocket inside the camera. She's bound that together with the sinew and used found objects to create the strap and the shutter button. I'll see if I can give you a hint of the elements there. Now you can see a little bit of the negatives here. Some of these negatives are from her own collection, and some negatives were given to her by friends or relatives or people who knew that she was particularly interested in film. And so this really unique way of using a plastic to create something that references itself and that references the way the material itself is used. So a great example, as we're talking about the concept of material in sculpture, how are artists using or highlighting the materials and incorporating characteristics of the sculptural material into their works. I want to show you this piece here, not only because it's another example of a wood sculpture and really shows the carving aspect of working with wood, but because as we look closer, we can see it also uses a lot of stone carving and shaping of stones as well. This particular piece is by Marcel Saint-Amand, and it's called My Greatest Support. It says Grandma, Mimi, Kukum, and Baba, and the other side says Grandpa, Pepere, Nimushum, and Guido, right? All different words for grandmother and grandfather. And two walking sticks presented in a stand together on this large base. So this is Caragana wood. I'll zoom in on the artist on the card here, Marcel Saint-Amand, My Greatest Support, Caragana wood, gemstones, copper, and brass. And these works are all for sale. And so this is a local wood that many people might want to uproot these bushes and think of it as an undesirable plant or bush. But Marcel has really been enjoying the color contrast in the wood. The reddish brown interior here and then this pale creamy exterior. Marcel also does a lot of work in the Rock Lab. He's a member of the Mid-Pro Rock and Gem Society, and they have equipment for cutting and shaping stones in the bottom of the Prince Albert Arts Center. So if you're looking for a new hobby to take up once social distancing has ended, definitely look at checking out the Rock and Gem Society. And so Marcel is using the different carving and shaping techniques, not just on wood, but on the stones as well. And with his wood carving, he's emphasizing the colors, the grain of the wood, and he's making sure that we can appreciate the colors and not the grain, but the markings or the striations and the patterns in the individual gemstones as well. So I'll let you focus in on, we have all these wonderful floral shapes and figures here as we look at the different elements. We have the positive and negative shapes here of sculpture as he's actually gone and carved in between the wood. He's left some space there so that this vine has a sense of being free from the rest of the stalk. And then also similar aspects of incorporating the gemstones into the other walking stick here. We have this really large stone set into this wonderful carved element here. So here with the wood, Marcel is bringing our attention to the wood color changes as well as all of the different ways that you can carve and shape the wood and use these delicate carving techniques. Thank you so much, Marcel. Thinking about different sculptural materials, of course, ceramic is a perennial favorite, and we have a variety of sculptural forms on this table here made in clay by Leslie Tuchek, the bowl of fish, and wonderful use of glaze, right? And we can carve into the ceramic. We can use these, this incising here, and the way that the glaze will form a slightly raised surface on the ceramic works. By Jeff Stewart, we have a pitcher. And so another example of a functional piece of pottery. And with the ceramics, we can enjoy the qualities of the glaze. And we're not just appreciating and enjoying the beautiful form of this vessel, the different proportions that create really pleasing shapes for a vessel, the aspects of negative space that allow us to use this vessel. But with ceramic, we can also appreciate the quality of the glaze and the idea that you can never really replicate something. So definitely something to watch for when we enjoy ceramics and we think about ceramics as a sculptural material, is we're thinking about the finishing process, the glazing process as well. And here's a fantastic example of a use of negative space in a sculptural form. This is by Birgit Raduns, and this is mandala bowl, monkeying around. Birgit will often work in porcelain. She says this one is a cone 6 fired clay. And you can see these different monkey shapes that are frolicking around the outside of this bowl. And I'll show you the interior as well. It's a beautiful ceramic paint job on the inside. It's a really delicate mandala form. And again, you see the carving and the shaping. So unlike the carving of wood or the assemblage of metal, we think about how ceramic is modeling, right? We're building up the form. We're certainly carving and cutting away, but essentially we're creating the form by building up the material and then firing it. So when we think about sculpture, we think about not just the material and how it's made, but physically how is the form created. So we have some great examples of positive and negative space here, and different vessels and some decorative forms here. Two more types of sculptural materials that we're going to look at. Over here, we are looking at the winner of the Dana Waring Popescu Memorial Award for Mixed Media. And this is by Curtis Kerr, and it's called Summertime Sadness. And you see the material here is noted as stuff, found objects. And of course, this is a type of assemblage made with found objects, exactly as he said. This is a pair of sunglasses. These are cigarettes. These are ashes in an ashtray. And this is real Coca-Cola carbonated inside the bottle here. And so the choosing of these found objects and the arrangement of these objects into an artwork, right? The artist has chosen them and arranged them and brought them together to create a new aesthetic experience for us. That is essentially what this type of sculpture is about. This is another type of sculpture. This is another way to create sculptures that we see coming to prominence in the 20th century and continuing into the 21st century. So the idea that we can choose and arrange, we don't have to carve and model, we can assemble in this way. So found objects, thank you, Curtis. This is lovely. Two more examples of found object sculptures are over here. This is Shelley Kasevsky. This is Juanita, mixed media. And as we talk later in our series of elements of art, we will definitely talk about color and we'll talk about texture. But you can see she has completely covered this found skull form with a variety of buttons and pins and charms and different elements. So all found objects and brought together to create something new, right? A sculpture assemblage that's greater than the sum of its individual parts. And put right next to it, this is by Cheryl Ring, The Incredible Riches of Being a Maker, and a collage, a sculptural collage. And so again, the application of found jewels onto a skull form, creating this really unique object. So found objects being used to create sculptural forms. And then finally, one of the things that we'll have a look at today is soft sculpture, right? The fact that we can use fabric, we can use natural materials like wool and silk to create artworks as well. Soft sculpture. This is by Heike Fink. This is called Playing Around, and it's felt, silk, and natural materials. And so Heike is well known for creating these absolutely exquisite, really playful and adorable felt sculptural forms. And so here she's created an entire group of otters that are playing on top of this beautiful silk scarf. And here she's able to sculpt the material using a modeling process, probably some wet felting as well as needle felting going on here to create and build up the forms from the wool roving. But she's also using natural found materials like the driftwood and like the small pieces of rock and shell that she's strewn about the different sculpture here. And so, of course, with this particular piece, she's emphasizing the quality of the softness of the wool to be able to mimic the fur of the animals. So really the material, the sculptural material she's using is really integral to her intentions with this piece to be able to capture the playfulness and the characteristics of the otters and their soft fur. So a small selection of the different sculptures that we have on display at the Man Art Gallery, and a bit of a taste of some of the things that we can discuss as we look closer at our sculptural series that will continue, and as we look at the different elements of art. Thank you very much for joining us as we talk about this first introduction to some of the elements of art for our new series. And hopefully you've enjoyed this overview of the different materials that have been used for sculpture in the 44th Winter Festival Art Show and Sale. Do let me know if you have any comments down below. We'll also be posting this video to YouTube. And thank you very much to all of the teachers that have reached out to us and asked if we can help to support at-home learning through our YouTube channel or through our Facebook videos with more tours of the gallery. So thank you very much, and let me know if you practice sculpture and if you have some favorite materials that you use for your sculptural works. I'm Lana Wilson. This is the Man Art Gallery in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Thank you for joining us.